Are you ready to talk about Mel Robbins?
Are you ready to talk about Mel Robbins?
No, I feel
I'm
insane.
listening about Mel Robbins, and I feel like you might, explode. Go.
Okay, you guys. I read a book by Mel Robbins. I read Let Them. I listened to an audiobook by Mel Robbins. I read a couple of profiles of her because I've been trying to get to the bottom of, first of all, who she is, where she came from, why she has this level of success, and why does it piss me off so much?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the questions we're working with here. So she's 57 years old currently. She was born and raised in Michigan. Her dad is a doctor. I think her mom might have been a stay-at-home mom. It's unclear from what I've read. She went to Dartmouth for undergrad and then Boston College for law school. She was then a public defender in Manhattan.
Okay, so she's a smart lady.
Mm-hmm. For a few years. When she was living in Manhattan, that's when she met.
You're saying Manhattan, so funny.
I just found out about it earlier in this episode when you said there was stuff there. When she was living there, she met her husband, Chris Robbins. He was a commodities trader.
Sure.
They later, I believe, moved back to Boston, where I think he's from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they had the next stages of their career. After she went on maternity leave, it's kind of unclear exactly when this happened. She decided on a career switch, worked at a bunch of startups and a ton of different jobs. She kind of dabbled in a lot of different industries. I think for a little while she was like a correspondent or something for CNN.
Okay.
She
is a woman who, what she wants to do, she'll do.
Yeah, she was a legal correspondent for CNN.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she was covering the George Zimmerman trial for CNN at one point.
Wow, that was not recent, but I guess that was when I was in college, so like 15 years ago.
Yes.
Okay.
So then during all these career switches, she decided to hire a life coach to help her decide, or like a career coach. And that coach said, what you should be doing is what I'm doing.
Career coaching.
Coaching.
How lucky.
So then she trained.
And was there a course?
So she trained under this person and then became a coach. She was living in Boston. She had a lot of high profile clients. That's kind of her origin story. It led to motivational speaking. Motivational speaking became a full-time job. Then she had a radio show and a podcast. Eventually on the podcast, she talked about hearing the words "let them" and how inspiring that was to her. That episode skyrocketed. So she wrote a book about it. Let Them became an international bestseller and people got "let them" tattooed all over their bodies. So
horrifying.
Before we get further into her backstory, I want to talk about Let Them, and I want to get into this book a little bit further.
It's called Let Them?
Yes.
So the whole book is those two words?
The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins and Sawyer. She claims she co-wrote it with her kid, but there's not a single footprint of that kid on this book.
How old's the kid?
In her 20s.
Sawyer's a girl?
Yes.
Why would Sawyer be a part of this?
Because I think Sawyer was the one who first introduced the two words "let them" in the origin story of Let Them. So essentially what happened is it was her youngest child, Oakley, a boy. Oakley was going to prom, was very disorganized about it.
Oakley and Sawyer, are you sure they weren't cutting down wood in the back of the house to build the cabin to raccoon in later?
Claire, they've never seen a raccoon in their goddamn lives.
What are they wearing as hats?
So Oakley had prom. And it was just all very disorganized. He didn't want a boutonniere. He waited till the last second to get a tux. He didn't make dinner reservations for his date. And Mel Robbins is running around being like, none of this is planned. Oakley is like, we're just going to go to a taco stand. It's no big deal. And the mom's like, you can't go to a taco stand for prom. And then Sawyer goes, Mom, let them. Like, let them do whatever the fuck they want. It doesn't matter.
And this is advice that people are using to handle like grief and divorce and child rearing.
Exactly. And that's what I wanted to say is this is actually really good advice for hovering parenting, for, you and I both have little attacks where we get way too involved in other people's business. And sometimes you have to go, hey, let them keep dating that freak. It's fine. And it is good advice for those situations. What it isn't is good overarching advice as a lifestyle mantra. And that's what she attempts to paint it as in this book. She really touches on a lot of topics where I'm like, you're stretching this in a way where it makes no fucking sense. And it could actually be horrifying to people. There's a chapter on addiction. I mean, we'll get to the addiction chapter later. I mean, in the intro for this book, she talks about other interviews and other people she's spoken to. She spoke with Martin Luther King Jr.'s children where they were like, that's really profound advice. And she includes that in this book to be like, I've done the research. I've asked around.
Yeah, Martin Luther King Jr. finally said, if they want to be racist, let them.
Let them. You can only change yourself, and I don't want to be. So there's two components to let them. There's let them, which is you just have to let go of it, let people do what they're going to do. and let me. You can only change your own response. So, let them be careless. Let me lead thoughtfully.
I guess I still am stuck on how trivial of a story is the launch pad for this entire belief system.
Exactly.
And that's a perfect example of let them. When there's like absolutely no consequence one way or the other, you're just wrapped up in your own neuroses about prom.
Exactly. I mean, at one point she's talking about going to a national park where there was a sign that says you had to keep your dog on a leash and you had to pick up after your dog. And so she kept her dog on a leash and picked up her dog's shit. And then she saw someone else with her dog off leash and she wanted to go tell that person, hey, you're breaking the rules. But then she had to be like, let them. It's not my responsibility to make sure that dog is on a leash. And it's like, yeah, this is just an extremely trivial situation. It's not your problem. That's the park ranger's problem. Like, it's someone else's problem to come tell this woman to put her dog on a leash. Let them. But what the fuck does that have to do with like dealing with family drama? So the first chapter that I found really interesting is when she's getting into her own family dynamic and how applying let them retroactively has helped her with certain tensions in her family. Okay, I want you to read this quote of what her mom said to her before she married the man she's now been married to for, I guess, like 30 plus years.
Okay, so I'm the mom.
Yeah.
I didn't choose him for you, and if it were up to me, I wouldn't have. So I'm not going to act like I did.
So she goes on to say, retroactively, she understands that her mom was afraid that if she married this guy, Chris, she would stay on the East Coast instead of moving back to Michigan. And it's heartbreaking when your daughter permanently creates roots not where you want them to. That's why her mom hated.
So who's letting who do what?
So she's letting her mom process this anger. Let me make the choices. But what I want to say is this is fucking preposterous because who would fucking say that about their future son-in-law unless they fucking hated that guy? There are a couple other lines in there that I didn't include.
I do think, I think there's a lot of fucked up parents out there.
Exactly. There are a lot of fucked up parents out there and you can't change everyone. But there are some lines where her mom is very specifically like, I don't want you to marry him. Don't marry this guy. And I do think for a parent to come to you, I mean, I know people who are married to people who obviously fucking suck. And I've actually talked to their parents beforehand to be like, could you say something?
Yeah, but you also come from a culture where being married is more important than being married to like, I don't know.
She's from Michigan.
I guess I'm just saying I don't think it's that crazy. Like, I don't think it's that unique of a situation to have parents. Like, famously, there's in-law drama.
Okay.
True?
True.
I'm not saying it's not good, but I'm not saying it's that. I don't think it's as unusual as you think it is.
I find it so unusual.
I think you're giving the mom like there must have been something very legitimate there.
Well, we'll get to the part where he is an alcoholic later.
Yeah. Well, who isn't?
I don't know. Isn't there a point where you could say, well, let's dive into that further. What do you hate about the person I'm about to literally marry? I get that I don't know their entire family dynamic. I think that there is a reason for conversation sometimes. It's not just let them.
Or can I say, I think you could have a conversation if you want to say, like, what are you worried about? Or you could ignore them. But let them is just like, doesn't feel like it. Like, let them hate on us. That's your mom.
That's your mom. Okay, so then she gets into emotional responses to things in adult friendships. This chapter is about adult friendships.
Okay. Oh my gosh. I wonder why you're emphasizing adult. I wonder what's about to happen at like a movie theater birthday party. I should read this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Mel.
Mm-hmm.
Adults, at their core, are just as emotional as children. The difference is they are better at hiding it most of the time.
So she, in this chapter, and a lot of times she does caveat things where she'll go back and forth and be like, I'm not talking about like a serious problem. But she kind of paints it so that any emotional reaction between adults is like a deeply unnecessary and out of bounds reaction that should not have ever happened, which I find ridiculous because I think that there are reasons to be emotional towards people. And if you are acting out of pocket, I was thinking about us. I think you and I sometimes have disproportionate emotional reactions to each other.
Oh my God. I was with my in-laws this weekend and I said something about how we can't just rent a studio hourly because part of our artistic process is getting into a fight and then going for a snack, calming down and coming back. And Mac's mom went, you guys don't fight. Mac sat there and goes, yes, they do.
Listen, but I also think instead of just saying, let them have an emotional response, I think a huge part of our ability to work together has come from afterwards. Sometimes you have to be like, hey, let me burn off some steam. and then coming together to say like, here's what was upsetting to me, here's how this, and then understanding each other's emotional processing so that we can avoid those things in the future instead of being like, let them be dramatic. Like, let it happen, and then we'll just like ignore it. And like, you're acting like an 8-year-old. It's not my problem.
Yeah,
it is my problem because I work with you directly. Like,
but also like, what is a friendship if not like a combining of emotional states?
Exactly.
I guess this idea that like adult friends should never be emotional is like, then what is friendship to you? It feels very like cocktail party quarterly check-ins.
So one of her big examples of an unregulated emotional state is giving people the silent treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about how in high school, one of her friends gave her the silent treatment. It was really immature. And
I agree.
Like, I agree, but also, why is your only reference?
Yeah, if you've never had a silent treatment given to you by an adult, then maybe it's not as bad a problem as you think it is.
Like, we're talking about adult friendships having unregulated emotional responses towards each other that create problems. And your one example of having like a disagreement in friendship is one time when you were in high school. That's not an adult friendship. That's a child's friendship where people give each other the silent treatment. She says, emotions are just a burst of chemicals in your brain that ignite and are absorbed into your body within 6 seconds.
What?
Research shows that most emotions will rise up and then fall away within 90 seconds if you don't react to them.
Huh? Okay, then I'm broken, man. Because I felt things for like 15, 20 minutes at a time. Like, does she think emotions are like a bee? Like, if you feel it buzzing around you, just go very still and it'll leave you alone?
And this chapter has like very few caveats.
Is there a citation though? What research?
She talks to various doctors. It's all like anecdotal research from a singular doctor. So she'll talk to a professional and then get a quote that confirms her belief and then include it from that professional. But it's not like a research study done on 100,000 adults shows that emotions last for.
Research study done on you and me. That's not how emotion. Like, what does she say based on this evidence you should do? Just like take a deep breath for 90 seconds and everything will go away in your whole life.
Let them have an emotional response and come back to it later.
What about me? Let me have an emotion. Like, should I deny my emotions or should I let myself feel them?
Me is Mel Robbins and me has no emotions, I think.
I guess I'm so
Me is nothing but pragmatic.
It just feels untrue.
It just feels like wildly out of place, this chapter.
Can I also say something?
Of course.
If the idea is that somebody else is going to get over their own emotions in 90 seconds, which I've never heard of in my life, and so you're just going to let them feel that and then come back to them later, I almost think that could be interpreted sometimes as a silent treatment. Like if I watched you have a meltdown and I said, I'm out then, I'll come back later.
Exactly.
I think you'd be like, I feel ignored.
And I feel like obviously people process things in different ways. Like you like a little bit of time off when you're upset about something.
Yes.
To like kind of level out. And I've learned that and like gotten better at providing that. But like that's through conversation about the way that we handle emotions, not like letting you be upset. You know what I mean?
I just still don't. I don't know what the point of like emotions aren't. None of this makes sense.
Sorry. None of it makes sense. And then the thing is, this chapter is much shorter and had very few caveats, whereas a lot of the other chapters are written in this kind of circular way to sort of deny any responsibility if it doesn't apply to a situation. Like in order to be like, but if you're talking about this, then it's actually let them experience their emotions fully and you'll support them. You know what? Like that's in the addiction chapter. It's like, let them be an addict and you support them unless they're asking you for money, in which case, no. In this chapter, it's short. It has very few caveats and it makes almost no sense based on like human reactions to anything. And it made me wonder if that was just like SEO because female friendships are kind of like blowing up right now. And like companionship is a big topic right now. And this book came out in 2024.
I wonder if she did it in a tackle your smallest problem first situation. She goes, well, how do you deal with friendships? That's a very small part of anybody's life. Let them. Next problem.
So then she talks a little bit about like toxic comparison culture. And that I didn't mind. I think she says like you have to let people be who they are and instead of feeling attacked by their success, make them your teacher. Look at what they're doing. See how you can emulate the things that you're jealous of and make that your life too. And I'm like, that's not terrible advice.
Sure.
But when you're just spewing words all over the place, eventually you trip on some things that work.
Well, I think what the common factor between the, like, why does it work sometimes and not other times is because when somebody's living a life that has literally nothing to do with you, the idea of expending your own energy on being upset is preposterous.
Yes.
The idea that somebody on Instagram is making you jealous and that's making you mad and you don't think they should be doing that. Yeah, let them, because you're not going to change their life. You don't know them. You know what I mean? Like things that don't matter at all. A group of high schoolers having tacos at prom. Yeah, let them. However, you can't just be like, oh, your best friend and you are in a fight. Let them. That's not true.
Yes.
Because that impacts you, and it has something to do with the fact that you've like kind of made a social pact with this person that you will care.
Exactly. So this gets to one of the things that I find to be deeply alt-right pipeliney about her content and about the entire let them theory, because obviously if you are letting yourself get stressed out because of your son's prom plans, let them. But if you are approaching everything in life as I can only affect me, I can't affect anyone else around me, it's deeply individualistic in a way that then turns into all I can affect is me. Therefore, any success I have is only because of me. Therefore, any success anyone else hopes to have can only be because of them. Why would my tax dollars pay for your kid's lunch? You know what I mean? Like it becomes this like, it really applies perfectly to a lot of alt-right beliefs.
Well, like the selfishness.
Yes. So then she gets into a chapter where she talks, just rambling. A lot of this was just rambling about the same sentence over and over and over again. But she gets into this rambling chapter about how you can't make anyone else change. And I was like, yeah, the entire book is about how you can't affect other people's behavior. Like, why would you write a chapter on how you can't change other people? And then I realized—
that's also the interesting linguistic device of let them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it's like she's acknowledging that nobody will ever be able to say, I can't control your behavior. So instead, you're giving yourself the right to be like, I'm actually giving you permission.
Mm-hmm.
But it still puts you in the seat of agency on somebody else's behavior.
Another reason that I think she wrote this chapter is to pitch next ideas.
Sure.
To pitch next slogans. So what we have is called the ABC method. Do you want to read the ABC loop?
Apologize, then ask open-ended questions. B, back off and observe their behavior. C, celebrate progress while you continue to model change. What does that have to do with it?
So when you're encouraging someone else, you can't make anyone else change, but you can ABC method them. Apologize for getting up in their business. And
it's so funny to think about doing this with like things that people really are judgmental about, like a tacky wedding, being like, hey, I'm so sorry, but I was just wondering, why did you choose to have balloons instead of flowers? B, back off. Just look at their photos of balloons instead of flowers. C, celebrate progress. Hey, I noticed you added some flowers in addition to the balloons. Look at what I did. I had no balloons. And then I guess you go back to A again. I'm so sorry to ask this, but are you still considering having balloons? That's the ABC method on things that we're actually judgmental about.
And this is just like a preposterous thing that she, I think, included because what we're going to talk about later is her business model, which is just like saying lots of catchy little slogans until one of them goes viral and it's a book.
Can I ask, what was the ABC method for?
The ABC method is for you can't change other people, but you can ABC method them.
I guess I feel that there can't be a one-size-fits-all standard for how you treat like your children, your boss, your friends, and neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
There's different power dynamics. There's different relationships. There's different like requirements. Like when you are a parent, it's actually more important that you monitor behavior than when you're a friend, than when you're a family member.
Yeah. And she gets into a couple caveats about parenting where she goes like, you are responsible for their physical and emotional well-being. So it's a little bit different. But with friendship, with work, with business, or business is work, I guess. But there are a bunch of different categories where we're going to get into this a little bit later, but she'll just put them all in one sentence and say, this is all one thing. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is where she talks a little bit about like when other people are having problems. Chris, he had, I guess after he was a commodities trader, he opened a pizza business.
Did this get them in bankruptcy?
Partially.
Okay.
And he had a really bad drinking problem.
Sure.
And the business was failing. And so
it makes sense though that if you're an alcoholic, you're like, what does everybody always want to be eating? Pizza.
Pizzas.
It's a failure-proof design.
So with the pizza business and the failing, and like she couldn't change him, but she could encourage him to make the right choice, which was to walk away from the pizza business. And I'm like, wait, but what about his business partner? He just left the pizza business, whatever. We don't have time to get into that, but I see why your mother was worried. So she gets into like severe problems, like when someone actually needs help and you can't just let them, which for her is like drug addiction.
I like that she's like, when there's severe problems, because I would say going into like a huge amount of debt because you have a failing business is a pretty big problem.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, let them do what you tell them to.
Yeah. So she talks about how it's hard to watch people struggling, but the truth is they have to be in more pain than pleasure in order to want to change. So she's like, when someone has a drinking problem, like drinking has to be causing them more problems then it's causing them joy. Otherwise, they're never going to want to change. And so you have to like figure out how to support, but also not enable them, which to her means like setting boundaries. Like you can essentially set the boundary of like, you can live here, but you have to be clean. And it's like, I think that there's people who've done very significant research about the right way to handle this situation. And I think it's not so fucking simple as half a chapter in your stupid ass book.
It's true about any struggle. No one heals an eating disorder until restricting is more painful than facing the issues they are running from. No one faces sex addiction until hiding is more painful than facing the truth. Again, a couple of sentences that I don't think have any real meaning or bearing in reality. People die from eating disorders. People like burn their lives to the ground over sex addiction.
But
ask Elizabeth Gilbert.
Not only do they have no real meaning and no bearing in reality, really, but it's the fact that she would include something that these are very dangerous issues that have an enormous amount of like professional research that still hasn't quite figured out how to make sure people don't die of eating disorders and drug addiction.
Yeah.
And so for her to dedicate a couple chapters in this book to being like, be supportive, but like set boundaries. Shut the fuck up, Mel Robbins. Like, who are you to talk about someone's addict son when you're like, my son didn't make dinner reservations for prom?
So I understand what you're going through. We've all felt disappointment before.
Anyway, then it wraps up with a chapter about love. Hold on. This is a funny quote.
I love being Mel Robbins, even though Ashley does the accent so good. Hi, I'm Mel Robbins.
I'm Mel Robbins, and I want to tell you why you're not in love.
The relationship is largely happening as a fantasy in your own mind because you live in the potential of what could be, not in the reality of what is.
Oh, sorry, to qualify, this is about people who find themselves unable to get into a serious relationship and all of their...
Like you. This is me. Like your problem.
This is at me.
I'm so excited to find out what's wrong with you. Thanks, Mel Robbs.
Oh, we're about to find out.
The relationship is largely happening as a fantasy in your own mind because you live in the potential of what could be, not in the reality of what is. What fantasy are you living in, Ashley?
Get to the diagnosis.
You need to be single. If you truly want to fix this and create the healthy, long relationship you've always dreamt about, you must be willing to be single for the next year and focus on figuring out how to be happy by yourself and to heal. The problem is you. If you have this pattern of chasing love but never getting to a healthy commitment, you are not the exception. You are the problem. Isn't the problem that you weren't in a love? No offense, but you've been single. That's the problem. The problem isn't that how do you cure your singleness by being single? That was what we were curing.
That's what we were. Okay, so she basically says if you are living in this fantasy land, then you're
What is the fantasy land?
Like
that one day you won't be single?
No, it's like when you start dating someone and then you create a fantasy about the relationship instead of being in the moment with the relationship and like letting them leave.
But the thing is, in that situation, you're in a relationship and being single is different.
Yeah.
This is literally advice to people who are in bad relationships, not people who are not in relationships at all.
Yeah. But so she's saying if you're unable to be in a serious relationship, it's because you're not like listening to people, basically.
Oh, is that true, Ashley?
I don't think so.
Well, I guess you wouldn't know. You haven't been listening.
I guess I'm the problem, so I'm not the one to ask.
It's funny because by definition, if you're on a date with somebody, they too are single.
Yeah. Well,
hopefully. Fingers crossed. But do you know what I mean? Like, well, which of the two singles are the problem? You can't both not be listening to each other. If you were both living in the fantasy of the relationship, then it seems like your relationship would just be a mutual fantasy.
Yeah. So this book essentially is one tagline that she learned from her daughter, said on her podcast. The episode went viral and she turned it into a book, and it really starts to unravel as the book goes.
This is why you always have to have a podcast, because you never know if you talk 100 hours, if you might say one smart thing once. It could literally be 2 syllables. 2 syllables, and you could launch a career.
So the question at this point is, who the fuck is Mel Robbins? Why did she write this book? Like, how did she come to this position where she had a top podcast that people were listening to that let them to go viral, that allowed for the creation of this book? So in the intro to Let Them, she talks about her origin story kind of in the motivational speaking space. And the first time she ever gave a major talk, she had been kind of bottoming out in her life, according to herself, and she was asked to speak at a conference. And she had recently started applying a method to her life called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method, or something like the 5-second rule, or whatever the fuck she calls it. So she had been applying that to her life to get out of a rut.
I thought she applied it to her life to get out of bed.
And a rut. It was to get her out of bed and then to do things. She applies the 5-second rule is a whole ass book where you can apply counting down from 5 seconds to anything. and it came out in 2017.
Oh.
And so that was her first kind of big success that led to where we are now. And that started from a TED Talk. So I want you to read this introduction of how she introduces how she got to where she is now.
I didn't feel like I was in the position to give anybody advice, but that all changed one fateful day when an old roommate recommended me as the perfect person to give advice on career change at a small event. I suppose she thought of me because I had changed my career so many times, even I lost count. When I walked on stage and 700 people in the audience were staring back at me, my mind went blank. I can feel my chest and neck turn red. I then proceeded to have a 21-minute long anxiety attack on stage. About 19 minutes in, I forgot how to end my talk on career change, so I blurted out the 5-second rule and how I used it because I couldn't think of anything else to say. I must have blacked out because I also don't remember the part where I gave everyone in the audience my email address. It turns out that was one of the first TEDx conferences ever held. They filmed it and a year later posted the video online. Not only did it go viral, it's become one of the most watched TEDx talks of all time.
So this presents it as a stumbling into a TED Talk. She, in the TED Talk, which I watched, says, you guys think you're so fancy, you're attending TED. She knows she's at a TED Talk. Like the whole time she knows she's at a TED Talk, and she has a slideshow where she presents the countdown method, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. So this thing of being like, 20 minutes in, I had no idea what I was saying, so I just told them about my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. It was a slideshow that she had created. Like she made this whole thing. This was in 2011 after her first book had already come out, which she doesn't ever refer to. It's not on her website. It's not in this book. In the intro for this book, she talks about how after her TED Talk, it led her to self-publish her first book.
Oh my God. And she'd already published a book?
So I was like, what the fuck have I been listening to for a day and a half now? There's another book called Stop Saying You're Fine, which she has like all but erased from her history.
Where'd you find it?
It's on Spotify audiobooks. It's on Amazon, but on her website, she doesn't talk about it. In her book, she doesn't talk about it.
In her personal narrative, it's been erased.
In her personal narrative, the way—
And what is it called?
It's called Stop Saying You're Fine.
Okay.
So in her, like in the Leave from America style workshopping of your story, that book no longer fits into her story.
What she wants is somebody who like accidentally was like called upon and begged to become a career coach.
Yes, and she wants to be an overnight sensation.
It's so funny to have written a book telling people how to like fix their lives and then be like, why would I be asked to give a TED Talk?
And the reason it no longer fits into her narrative is because what she is selling you is success. She doesn't have any real credentials. All she has is the appearance of power and success. And that is what she is selling back to you as something that you too are capable of. So if she has failures in her history, they speak negatively to her story, even though as like a life and career coach, the admission that not everything has been a hit and that she has been grappling at this level of success for 20 years should be more inspiring, but it's not because it makes her seem imperfect.
But doesn't she have a story like a lot of this came from we were in like hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt because
I'm glad you asked. We're going to get there.
Okay, because I'm like, I thought she was somebody who's like, I've overcome and you can too.
So this TED Talk is from 2011.
Mm-hmm.
The 5-second rule came out in 2017. Her other book came out in either 2010 or 2011. So this was something that she obviously was trying to do to promote that other book because they're in the same theme. They're in the stop saying you're fine, stop saying you can't do things through line. Like this TED Talk was about the book that I had just listened to, which she no longer refers to. And specifically, repeatedly in her bio on her website, in the intro to this book, in various places, she says the 5-second rule was her first book. And she calls it her first self-published book. And I think it's because she's trying to like subtly erase the other book, which was published by, I believe, Crown Publishing.
Gotcha, bitch.
And in the TED Talk, she says, my name is Mel Robbins, and for the last 17 years, I've done nothing but help people get everything they want. So at that point, she was coming from a place of, I've been doing this for years, not I've stumbled into.
When did she say this?
In 2011.
She says for 17 years, she's been in the business of helping people get what they want.
Yes.
And at one point, she'd been a public defender?
Yes.
And then she was a CNN correspondent?
And then she was a life coach privately. And we're going to later talk about the 2007 Boston Magazine profile where she is the kind of like life coach to CEOs in Boston. Boston's premier life coach.
And when did she graduate law school?
I don't know.
Okay, sorry. I guess I just am like, a lot happened.
A lot happened, and a lot has been happening. I think the most important takeaway from this discovery, because of the profile in 2007, where she's going after media opportunities, I believe that's how she found herself on CNN. She has been trying to find her current status as a famous life coach for 20 years. This has been
really
something she's been working for a very long time. So the TEDx talk, and I think it's also important. I was like, what is TED? What is TEDx?
TEDx is different.
TEDx is anybody can do anything.
Literally, TEDx is very much like the outlet mall of America speaking.
So this TEDx talk going viral, it's just a YouTube video that went viral.
I think you and I could set up a TEDx, and it's like TEDx Celebrity Memoirs. Then we can invite everybody who's ever read a celebrity memoir.
Yes. Her TEDx talk was called How to Get What You Want, or that was her through line. And it built off of this other book she'd written called Stop Saying You're Fine. It's about losing weight, starting a business, finding love. These are all examples that she applies the same logic to. And it's like, those are all such different fucking things. She says it all comes down to one word, the F-bomb, which is fine.
It's so true. Everything comes down to the F-bomb, fine. That's everything. Drag around those extra 40 pounds. You're fine? Question mark. Feeling like roommates with your spouse. You're fine? Question mark. This is so funny.
This is
so funny because normally when somebody goes, oh, I'm fine, you go, no, it's okay. You can be honest. And they go, well, really? It's funny for somebody to go, oh, I'm doing fine. And she's like, no, you're not. You suck.
And that is the entire premise of Stop Saying You're Fine. So her books are Stop Saying You're Fine, 2011, The 5-Second Rule, 2017, The High Five Habit, 2021, and Let Them in 2024. So we're going to get into a little bit more of Stop Saying You're Fine. In chapter 1, there's a lot in here that is like a workshopping, like a precursor to who she becomes later.
Can't believe how much Mel Robbins you consumed in 48 hours.
I worked on this for a week. Number one enemy of who you're meant to be, the snooze button.
The problem is you're talking to somebody who agrees.
I know. Okay,
the problem is I'm such a I'm a piece of lazy shit and I hate myself. If only I woke up at 5:30 a.m. like a CEO, I'd be better.
I actually want to trigger warn the rest of this. She gets wildly fat phobic.
The snooze button is the perfect symbol of human resistance and the emblem of anyone who feels stuck. Stuck in a dead-end job, stuck in a holding pattern, stuck in a stale relationship, stuck with a flabby body. Flabby is not a word you hear a lot these days. Stuck with a bunch of cool ideas that you'll never find the time to execute.
I mean, all of these things are so wildly different, and it speaks so much to who she was then, which was a lot more aggressive. This Mel Robbins that we know now, I'm your friend Mel. I'm waking up every day, trying my best, arguing with my kid Sawyer. That's like, I think, who she's built because this version of her didn't pop off the way she wanted it to. She wanted to be the person who's like the hard.
Well, you know what era this was. Remember The Biggest Loser and like Jillian, what's her name? Just like screaming in your fucking face that you're a loser. And I guess, as you said, talk about alt-right pipeline. She is now a Fox correspondent being like, healthcare, fucking go for a jog.
This is kind of the premise for this book. It's a diagnosis. You are someone who is stuck. And of course, someone who's buying a self-help book, you can kind of say likely the person is coming there because they feel stuck and they need a little bit of motivation. But the point of this and her entire platform at this point were to say, there is a right way to live life. You are likely living it wrong. And so she has to direct you in a certain direction. She has to direct you in her direction. And throughout this entire book, the correct direction is thin, rich, and heterosexually partnered. Mm-hmm. If you are not in a loving heterosexual relationship, if you are not skinny, and if you are not making the most money you could possibly make, you are in a holding pattern and your life sucks ass and you're right to feel like shit about it. There is not a single question of like any systems or realities that could possibly be making you unhappy. All you can control is yourself. It's very Republican.
No one is coming to do this for you. If you want more out of life, you must grow. Every part of your body grows for your entire life. Your hair, skin, and nails are growing. Your life needs to grow too. If your life stops growing in new directions, you'll find yourself longing for more.
And this I find to be deeply toxic and preposterous because I think the idea that we constantly need to be like striving and changing and like squeezing the juice out of everything. I do think, obviously, I'm very different to her, but I think that there's something to be said for like a level of satisfaction.
I agree, but I also disagree.
Yeah.
And that life does constantly change. And it's so funny because this is what I've been kind of ranting about with the Elizabeth Gilbert of like the grand pronouncement of how to live a good life. this idea that there's ever going to be like one final destination, one singular change, like get married, get divorced, become a lesbian, do heroin. Like I actually do think life is like a constant balancing act where, you know, every few months, every few years, things are different. People around you change. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. You could say like, I don't want to strive for more. I'm so happy with like my life and my family and blah, blah, blah. Well, your kids are going to grow up and leave. And now what? Like, I don't know. Like the thing is people around you are changing. The world is changing. I think the one thing I took from memoirs actually was this idea that you can't ever really put down the scepter of your own life. Like,
Yeah.
And I think about Elvira. I think about all the women who like you turn 60 and this idea that, oh, you get married and at 35, your career is on the right track. You have to constantly be pushing for yourself or you will be unhappy. And you can't just say, oh, I'm too old. Isn't that what we always tell the 24-year-olds who ready to?
No, and I agree with that. And I mean, she has a chapter in here that's essentially what I wrote my Substack about last week, saying it seems like there could be a risk when you change something in your life, but you can't say that there's no risk in staying the exact same. You don't know what will happen if you go for a new job, but you also don't know what will happen if you, you know, if you say, so I agree with her in that way, but I think that there is something so violent in the way that she harps on you're correct in believing your life is wrong.
No, that 100%.
Okay, so this is a really interesting and aggressive quote that I'd like you to read.
When will it be my turn? You've probably circled around the changes you want to make in your life like a dog circles around a tree full of squirrels. Lose 80 pounds. Wow, we've really gained 40 pounds since the last time we checked in. Start a business, stop smoking, build a house, meet someone, bank $1 million. Find your passion. There's no way you'll actually make those changes happen any more than that dog will climb that tree and you can list 100 reasons why, but you keep looking up and checking to see if those squirrels are still there. You're stuck in a loop.
These are all such different problems that have such different solutions. And she hops on them from lily pad to lily pad. And it's like she's just cast out billions of fishing lines to be like, surely this applies to someone. Somebody feels bad in their body or in their career or in their relationship or in their...
It's very when you get a tarot card that's like, oh, you're coming out of a period of wondering, huh? Yeah, normally in some area in your life, you're wondering.
And so she really uses it to jump from place to place to be like, surely this applies to someone. And if you think your life sucks, you're fucking right, bitch.
Yeah.
So she talks about how you're fighting against your brain. Your brain wants to be comfortable and you need to push yourself to try new things. And this book just kind of like floats from space to space, blaming you for your problems and essentially being like, you just have to get started. You just have to do things. And like a lot of it comes from admitting that you want to change, which is something I agree with. There's some good advice in this book, which is admitting that you want something to be different and not being afraid of trying, which I think is really important. But so much of it is accusatory of like your own failures to give yourself the life you want. I think this is an important quote.
You're making hundreds of small decisions each day to stay exactly where you are. Not trying to improve your sex life is a decision. Not exploring new career opportunities is a decision. Skipping the gym every day this week is a decision. Not calling your brother and demanding that he come home to care for your ailing mother is a decision. Doing nothing may feel easy, but it makes you unhappy. I will say, if your brother doesn't want to take care of your ailing mother, maybe just let him.
Let them. And that's exactly it. Like this book didn't work.
Yeah.
And so she's not trying to help people. She's anecdotally using people to bolster her own like public presence. And so I think that that's one of the things that really bothers me about these self-help gurus who are clearly in it for the fame.
Yeah.
Is because they are getting people to confide in them in order to then use those things as anecdotes for virality. And nothing about it is true. Like nothing in her methodology is consistent. It's all about like crafting her persona for the most eyes.
Yeah, she really did. Like the best scenario end goal was people getting let them tattooed on their body.
Yes.
That's more important than anybody's life changing.
Exactly. And I think she's right about needing to admit to yourself when you want to change. But one of her big mistakes in this book is believing that like a consistent and easy to fall back on thing we could all agree upon is fat phobia. And any of the serious topics that she gets into is about like drug use, which she has no understanding of. And she'll talk a little bit about relationships, but not really. I think at this point she was very afraid to put her own self out there, which when I listened to her podcast last year and when I read Let Them, you really find her being a bit self-deprecating and saying, I needed this tool because I lacked motivation in my life. And, she mentions it a little bit in her TED Talk and at the beginning of this book, but the center of it isn't, I needed to help myself and I'm going to use my own shit to help you. It's like, I'm superior and you're inferior, and let me tell you how to become me. Like, this is much more like, I'm living my life the correct way and you're not, and so you should want to listen to me. And it didn't work.
For the first time in God knows how long, Nancy catches a glimpse of herself nude in the full-length mirror. She's horrified by what she sees. Nancy has just admitted to herself that she's obese, and even worse, she feels extremely lonely. The tough shell is cracked. This is the truth. She can't lie to Janice anymore, and she can't lie to herself. She wants her life back. She wants a man. She wants to be in love.
So Nancy was 61 and single and let herself go. But now that she's finally admitted to herself that she needs to change, she's on the right track. And then she goes into saying, like, you have to tell people what they want so that they can help you help yourself, which again, it's like not really what Let Them is about, but
yeah. Tell them you're committed to losing 120 pounds. Oh my God.
It keeps climbing. So this is a woman who's afraid to go to a luncheon because she's on a diet and she doesn't want to be tempted by the dessert table.
Sure. Tell them you're committed to losing 120 pounds and you're not allowed anywhere near the dessert table, and it's their job to keep you from it. Mary, you need to lose 120 pounds. I don't think they'll be surprised you're on a diet. Okay, that's really mean. And also, like, what if she's just like, let them eat the dessert?
The whole point of this book is to tap on every single Jenga piece to find what's loose within you. Like, do you feel you need to lose weight? Do you feel lonely? Do you feel unsatisfied at your job? Do you feel like there is something wrong with you? And she's going to find it. And this book was too non-specific, I think, to really catch on, because you see that when she gave her TED Talk based on this book, the thing that people resonated with and the thing that made her TED Talk go viral was the 5-second rule, which became her next book. She needed like a tagline to grab onto, and stop saying you're fine wasn't successful.
Mm-hmm.
And so she had to chop it out. And what you see in the new era Mel Robbins is someone who kind of puts herself down a little bit more. In this book, she really hypes up her husband's incredible pizza business, which according to other reading material failed during the 2008 financial crisis. So it's interesting that in 2011, she's still bragging about the pizza shop. It's very confusing. Like, none of the timelines really line up because everything is an anecdote that she's crafting for her later conversations,
like,
for her later TED Talks.
She is her own case study for whatever bullshit she's trying to spew today.
Yes.
And since it's constantly changing, the case study has to constantly change.
Yes. So we're wondering,
when first she was yelling at you and saying you're a piece of shit who could make your life better if you wanted, she had to come from a place of, and I've only known success. But then later when she tried to be like, we have to let
failures.
go.
We're
and I know
all trying our best. So who was Mel Robbins in 2007 when she first started to make waves on the scene as a
I just cannot believe you have even more. I cannot believe it just keeps fucking going with you. I love it, but I'm just like, wow, the research never ends.
So she sat down with Boston Magazine in 2007, where she said to the interviewer, I believe I am a brilliant and gifted guide, that I've been given a tremendous intuition.
Sure.
So at this point in time, she is a life coach to CNBC executives, Johnson & Johnson executives. She has kind of like made waves in the Northeast as one of the premier life coaches. Robbins claims she's not in it for fame, that she just wants to improve more lives by coaching on a larger scale. But a former client says she's aggressive, she's narcissistic. A lot of women I know don't want to be around her. They know if she's invited to a party or event, they won't come. I don't think I'd hire her now. She's burning bridges like crazy in Boston. And if you're wondering, what is the business that caused them to go $800,000 in debt? At this point, obviously, they weren't $800,000 in debt. That is this number from like new era Mel Robbins lore, where she talks about her husband's failed business. She talks about like poor financial planning. Here's an interesting piece from this 2007 profile.
This trust shows up in huge financial leaps they're taking for Robbins' media career. With companies like Disney and Borders aboard the Mel train, one might assume she's raking in the cash. But Robbins' development deal paid only a lump sum to lock up exclusive rights to her talent. She's not drawing a salary for any of her Borders work and receives just a small stipend for the radio show. And she opted to pay for her own producer instead of using one that Sirius assigned to her, flies herself to New York for her meetings, finances promotional materials like demo reels on her website, and has been shelling out $600 an hour to a Manhattan voice coach. We are so out over the tips of our skis financially. Oh my God, so they spent
hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think, propping her up as like the guru du jour.
So she was taking bad deals and then I guess it all worked out.
I guess it all worked out, but this $800,000 in debt wasn't like bad business doing on her husband's end or whatever. This was the business of Mel Robbins. Like this was the business they were building that they went into debt over. And she can't specify that because she is now selling you her success.
I also think it's not relatable to women. I think there's something very relatable to women about this idea. Like, my husband had an idea and I backed my man and then he took us down under. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I think it's much more that the burden of the wife and the mother of the family being like, I got to raise the kids and I got to undo my husband's damage. But look, she pulled up everybody by her bootstraps.
She pulled up everybody by her bootstraps. But really what she did is she invested in herself. And this is what I think is so interesting, is that I think that is interesting in terms of like a motivational speaker, someone to look up to for women, someone who
said, I'm just going to
almost blew everything up trying to invest in her own career and then was able to make it work by the skin of her damn teeth. But that's not what she's selling you. She's selling you someone who just like has an innate, like the tips and tricks you need in order to get out of bed and make it happen.
And of course, I've only had like cursory experiences with her, like clips of podcasts on TikTok and stuff. But I was under this impression that, you know, she was just like a dutiful wife. Her husband had this dream. The restaurant went under. They were suddenly under all this stress. And she just said, you know, I'm going to get tight-lipped with her. Like, you know what I mean? I'm going to do an expense sheet and we're going to try really hard and we're going to get out of it. And here's how I got our family out of it. I'm going to help you. Like, that's the origin story that I had come to gather that she was pitching.
Yes.
Is this idea that like, I was just a mom and a wife like you. And, you know, we were thrown a tough time and I looked around and I got us out of it and I'm going to help you get you out of your tough time. Not like I've been angling at this.
Yeah. So she was, it seems like after becoming a life coach, she had a lot of high profile life coaching clients in Boston. Then she ended up with a radio show where she was giving people advice on the radio show. Those are a lot of the anecdotes in her first book. And then it became this kind of speaking series at Borders where she would interview people at the bookstore. And then they would go on their like YouTube channel or somewhere online, which is also interesting because she currently stands by this narrative she has that she was kind of just thrust into this TEDx conference and she didn't even know what it was. Even though if you watch the TED conference, she says you're at a TED Talk.
That's so I mean, to say that you blacked out. I mean, it's also like a bad story about what a public speaker you are. I mean, meanwhile, this is after she's invested tons of money into a $600 an hour voice coach. And she's just like, I'd never public spoken before.
But what I'm saying is she was doing this Borders speaking series. This article came out in 2007. The TED Talk was in 2011. So the narrative that was her first time public speaking
is preposterous.
Is like proven false by her own digital footprint. It's like a really interesting thing that we see happen now with influencers and podcasters and in this like guru space that they're just like workshopping a narrative that works for them and for whatever they're trying to sell next. In a 2014 New York Times profile, they talk about Mel Robbins having all these different roles. At one point, I guess she might have had a TV talk show. I don't know where that came from. But like,
well, it sounds like they bought the rights to her possibly doing a talk show, but it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah. So she'd had these Borders deals. She'd had an overall deal with Disney. This is back during the 2007 profile. It seems like something screeched to a halt.
Well, I just think a lot of those things
didn't pan out. And then she comes back in 2017 with the 5-second rule. I guess the TED Talk kind of bolstered her speaking career in 2011. She spent the next couple of years really building out an audience that way. Then in 2017 came out with the 5-second rule, built that into another book, started a podcast because I think that a lot of the traditional forms of media she was realizing weren't going to pan out. And now here she is with this one of the top podcasts and like a whole new story about her climbing her way to success from financial ruin. But the financial ruin was the origins of this career, which I think is just very fascinating. Other little odds and ends notes I have. She's loose with the word research, kind of in the way I am.
I saw a TikTok once.
We're very similar in that way. To her, research is like having talked to someone or doing anecdotal research.
She's like, I just have a feeling this is right.
Yeah. Also, one thing I noticed about her and Jay Shetty, so there's this conversation with her. It's not dated because it's from a blog, but it was definitely in the mid 2010s because the blog launched in 2012.
Talk about my baby Hitler, huh? If I could go back in time and unplug any mics.
The interviewer says, Mel, can we talk about politics for a moment? It seems that women are under attack by the GOP these days. Can you share your thoughts? This must have been like 2016. She says, I don't believe that all of the GOP are attacking women. It just seems to be the extremists getting more playtime, and they're the ones on the ballot. I know several Republicans who are very sympathetic to the plight of women, and Mitt Romney is one of them.
Mm.
And I think something very interesting about her and Jay Shetty is like the psychotic apoliticalness of them. And it's so fascinating that you have these people who are life coaches, like guides for living, who are like, but let's not get politics involved in it, because that would split their audience and create anything that they have to stand on.
Mm-hmm.
And they won't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I think is extremely important to note is, again, her father was a doctor. So I think being raised in the 60s, because she's 57 now, she was raised in Michigan. I don't know if her mom had a job, but I think being raised in the 60s by a doctor in Michigan would classify you as like deeply upper middle class. And her husband, she met him when she was a lawyer and he was a trader.
Sure.
So I think they had a lot of money there. I just think that like—
Well, she was a public defender.
Right. But he was a trader. And I know they had a nice house because the 2007 profile talks about how beautiful their house was and how toned Mel Robbins' legs were. But
can I say, unfortunately, I'm buying it.
I've really converted Claire to a Robbins head. A Robbins egg.
Is that what they call him?
I don't know. I do.
I want to be in Robin's nest.
But anyway, the point
I want her
is—
to spoon feed me chopped up, pre-chewed worm.
The point is, I want to say this preposterous, like how I clawed myself out of $800,000 of debt story is a upper to upper middle class exclusive experience where like—
I wonder if she's doing— Can I say, I would love to see the financials.
I would love to see the financials.
I wonder if part of that debt was a mortgage on a home.
Exactly.
I wonder if part of that debt was her law degree. But
I also
don't believe she spent $800,000 on a voice coach.
No, of course she didn't. I'm sure a lot of that numbers were, like you're saying, mortgage, student debt, having kids who maybe are like whatever. There's a lot of other things, but those types of numbers are only possible when you are a wealthy person. Like those are not levels of debt that can even possibly be incurred by people in like lower income situations, because we live in a system where rich people are allowed to take out more debt because it's all fake. So a lot of the things that she's clawed her way back from are like fake rich white people only problems that she's now applying to every instance of life, including heroin addiction, which is ridiculous. Also, there's an accusation that Let Them in general was plagiarized. There's a poem about like letting people do their thing.
Well, can I say I'll fight this back?
It's just 2 words.
Sometimes like in the comedy community, there's a joke that they're like, oh, that was a plagiarized joke. I go, no, that was just a basic joke that most people and their mom have already come up with. And they're like, there's some like, I've also heard it's a big Al-Anon principle.
Yeah.
So I guess I do feel let them eat cake. Like, I don't know. Let Them has been in our lexicography for a while.
Yeah. I think one of the final questions I have is like, should people just be allowed to buy into whatever they want to buy into? Like, is it really a problem that Mel Robbins exists about the world? And I think, yes. Like, I find it very frustrating the way she turns people seeking help into anecdotes to generate her own public profile and her own success. I feel like the counter argument is to say like she's out here just trying to help people. And I genuinely don't believe that's true.
No, of course she's not trying to help people. I understand that it is unfair to like place the burden on the individual when there are such systemic things at play. But I also, at the same token, understand that if you're feeling frustrated in your life and you get a book about how every system is up against you and you're never going to succeed, that doesn't, like, you only help. Feel more like there is something at some point at the end of the day. The truth is the systems are up against you. You have to see what you can do.
You have to see
it doesn't
what you
help
can do.
anybody. Like I always think about that like psychology test with like the rats that you learn in like intro to psych, where if you like shock rats at random, they get depressed. But if like you shock rats every time they touch something specific, they can overcome. Like there is something about, even when it's bullshit, giving somebody the first step to believe that they have the power within themselves, which like is something that you have to change your life.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And so that's why I went back and forth doing all this research is like, if someone is feeling helped by it, then like let her, you know, but I also find it so nefarious the way that she's created this system of just like spewing concepts out until one of them latches and then turning that into her next promotional cycle. Like everything is just like tapping people wherever she can find a loose brick and then being like, aha, I found one that people will buy. It's not about research. It's not about knowing anything. And the thing is,
but I almost feel like there's an interesting truth where she is just throwing out, does this work? Does this work? There is something in all of us. Like the reason all of these self-help books sound the same is because like
they are.
And there are just like simple truths that like when they hit you in the right way, like, you know what I mean? Like the journey of 1,000 miles does start with a single step. You do have to like decide you want to change before you can start changing. Like there are just truths. And I feel like it's almost funny that, you know, when she was yelling at everybody, being like, you're not fine, you actually suck, they rejected it. And then when she said, hey, you know what? Maybe you need to only like pay, like keep your own side of the street clean, worry about yourself. That resonated. That's let them.
Yeah. Well, I also think it has to do with like capitalism and packaging, because stop telling yourself you're fine is not catchy. The 5-second rule, the let them theory, like part of it is a topic that resonates, but I think a lot of it is also just wording that latches. Like she's looking for sticky language more than she's looking for an idea that means anything.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't think it's the most dangerous thing out there. You know what I mean?
I don't think it's the most dangerous thing out there for the most part. The thing I wish is that she would stay away from genuinely complex topics.
Yeah.
Like I think that reading it, there are times where I was just like, oh yeah, why not? Why not? Like this is annoying and I hate her, but like I'm wrong for that, I think, here. And then in each of the pieces I read, in each of the books I read, like in every single instance, she steps into something where I go, you have no right to be talking about this and someone's going to die from it. Like it's really bad to, I think, apply the let them theory to heroin addiction.
Yeah.
But she just has to do it to make money. Like, because at the end of the day, all she's doing is like creating an empire. And happy No King's Day to all who celebrate.
May we all get in an airplane that spews shit upon all of them.
I was also thinking about your additional context with Elizabeth Gilbert and the way that what she's selling is a constantly regurgitated and like constantly adjusting right way to live. And at a certain point, you look at her and you go, okay, I guess sell another book. I guess I'll check back in 2 years with the next book and the next theory.
Well, I guess I feel that she is slightly different than the Elizabeth Gilbert kind of the influencer way of, I still just saw Maria Bamford do a bit about it. That's phenomenal on, I think, Pod Save America. This idea that like, well, I was vegan, but now I found a better way and I'm a carnivore, but now I've actually found a better way and it's intermittent fasting, but now I found a better way. I guess I don't feel with Mel Robbins as opposed to Elizabeth Gilbert. These are all fundamentally the same idea, which is get off your ass and work. Seems like nobody's working these days. Whereas like Elizabeth Gilbert did say the best way to be a wealthy white woman was to go on a really long vacation and think about stuff. And now she's changed her mind and it's actually to be a bald lesbian. And those, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like she actually is coming back with a completely different. She is somebody who at the end of Eat, Pray, Love found her husband. And now at the end of All the Way to the River has found not having a husband.
Yeah.
And now if you're in a marriage, you're actually a pathetic idiot. And that is like a complete about face and prescription.
Yeah.
Whereas the 5-second rule isn't that different than let them.
I know. I guess I'm so interested. What I'm interested in is that her underlying actual life story.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, she's nothing but she's just found a way to make money. I mean, she's an Instagram poster.
Yeah. My ultimate conclusion was that she doesn't care about anything other than collecting people for anecdotes.
No, 100%. And I would not recommend taking her advice.
Yeah.
That being said, I still feel like somehow what Jay Shetty is doing is worse.
Oh, yeah.
Because Jay Shetty is coming at it from a spiritual aspect when he's actually just like deeply hoarding as much money as possible. And the fact that he's building out an AI tool to be like people's therapists actually feels
evil.
Dangerous and evil.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's Mel Robbins.